Hi, we're going to start talking about intro to ratios. We're going to be talking about what they are and how we can use them in everyday life. First of all, we have a couple of definitions. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities using the division. We're going to show you three ways that they can be written also. There are two types of ratios. One is a part to a part. And a part to a part means a relationship between one part of the whole and another part of the whole. For example, we have a number of boys to the number of girls in the 6th grade of Track 4. If the example of boys is 64 boys to 58 girls, that means boys to girls. So I've got part of the whole, which are the boys, the other part of the whole, which are the girls, is going to equal to 64 over 58. Now, I always want to simplify these. It's like a fraction, and I'm going to look at this and say, okay, what can I divide both of these into? What goes into both 64 and 58? They are even numbers, so I know 2 will go into both of them, and 2 will go into 64 32 times, and 2 will go into 58 29 times. If I look, can I reduce any more? I cannot, so I know that there are 32 boys to every 29 girls. So we have just a few more boys than we do girls in this particular example. Now we're going to talk about a part to a whole, a relationship between one part of the whole and the whole part. So here we've got the same example. You've got 64 boys and 58 girls. So if I'm looking for the example of the number of girls on the 6th grade track to the total number of students, I'm going to look at the number of girls I have, which are 58, and the total number of students are going to be when I add the girls and the boys together to get the total number of students, which I did over here on the side, is 122. So it's 58 to 122. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to see that they are going to reduce it down to the smallest that it can go. I know that both can be divided by 2. I know that 58 goes into, that 2 goes into 58. Let's see, it goes in there 29 times. And I know that 2 goes into 122 61 times. And I look at 29 and 61. I know that 29 is prime, so I know that I cannot divide anything else into it. So for every 29, the ratio is 29 girls to a total of 61 students. Is how I would read that. Now there are going to be 3 ways that we can write a ratio. One is to write it out in simplest form as an expression, 3 to 5, all right, of what we're talking about. I can use colons, which is 3 to 5, or I can use the fraction method, which is 3 to 5. I put a little asterisk here because this is the kind of ratio that you're going to be seeing. We're going to be writing it in fraction form. However, I want you to know that you can write it in 3 different ways. Let's look at an example, and it gives us some information of what we need to do here. It says a part to a part to a whole, and then we're going to simplify it. First of all, the instructions say to draw a simple diagram to model each of the problems and then list the part to the part and a part to the whole ratios. Simplify the ratios if you possibly can. Look at number 1. It says Pedro has a bag of marbles with 8 red and 4 blue in there. So I'm going to look at the marbles and I'm going to draw out with my diagram 5 red. I'm going to make them X's. And I've got 15 blue marbles in there. So I'm going to make these zeros, and I'm going to put 5, and another line of 5, and another line of 5. Okay? When I'm looking at this, I'm going to look at the number of red. I know I have 5 red to the 15 blue, which is going to be 15, and I want to simplify it. So look at 5 and 15, and what can honestly be divided into it evenly. 5 can go into both of these. 5 goes into 5 one time, and 5 will go into 15 3 times, okay? So if I look at this, I can say for every 5 red, there's going to be 15 blue in the bag. Or for every 1 red, there's going to be 3 blue. So if I come back down here for 1 red, I can circle 3 blue. For this red, I'm going to circle another 3 blue. For this red, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to circle 3 blue. And for this red, I can come over here and circle another 3 blue, which this is up here. And for this one, I'm going to circle another 3 blue over here. So it's kind of hard to see, but I can actually circle out how many, and it's going to take care of all my marbles. Here I've got 3 marbles to all the marbles. I've got the red marbles, which are 5. And I want to know, what is the total number of marbles? Well, if I have 5 red and 15 blue, that total is going to be 20. And to simplify it, I'm going to put what goes into 5 and 20 evenly. It's like simplifying a fraction. I know that 5 goes into both. So it's going to be 1 over 4 because 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 20 4 times. Now I'm going to look at the part to the whole. This was a part to the whole. This is part to part. I'm going to look like the part of the 15 marbles over the whole marbles, which were 20 to be exact. And I'm going to say what goes into both 15 and 20. Well, I know 5 goes into 15 3 times, and 5 will go into 20 4 times. So I can actually say for every 3 marbles, there will be 4 total marbles of the whole part of my equation. Excuse me. We're going to do one more, and then I'm going to let you do the other 2 that are on here, that are going to be on the sheet that I have given you. Number 2 says, Mr. Lee's gym class has 14 football players and 8 soccer players. So first of all, we're going to look at how many football to how many soccer. So this is part to a part. Because we're not looking at anything whole. So I've got 14 football players and I've got 8 soccer players. And I want to simplify it down as much as I possibly can. I know that in 14 and 8, 2 goes into 14 7 times and 2 will go into 8 4 times. So for every football player in his room, in that class, he will have 4 soccer players. For every 7 football players, he'll have 4 soccer players. Now I'm going to look to the number of football players to the number of athletes. Number of football players is 14, and here's where I have to find the number of athletes. I have 14 and 8, so I have to add up 14 and 8, and I know that that is going to give me 22. So there's a total number of 22 athletes in there. So this is going to be a part to the whole number of athletes. So 14 and 22, I know that 2 goes into both of these because they're both even. 2 goes into 14 7 times, and 2 will go into 22 11 times. So when I'm looking at comparing the number of football players to the number of athletes in the class, I know I will have 7 football players out of 11 athletes in his class. Now we're going to use it in fraction form and say, well, how many soccer players do you have to the total number of athletes? I have 8 soccer players. Okay, so these are the 8 soccer players.
Carla Torres, if you are in the building, please come to the front office, or teacher, if you have her, please have her call the front office at 203. Carla Torres, if you are in the building, please call the office. Thank you. Welcome to the office.
Sorry about that. As you can see, I'm still at school. So I've got 8 soccer players to the total number of athletes is 22. Again, I know that I've got 2 even numbers, so I can divide 2 into both of these. I will have 4 soccer players to 11 athletes. So in Mr. Lee's particular gym class, I will have 4 soccer players to every athlete that is in there when it comes to looking at soccer players and football players. You have 2 more problems on your worksheet. I want you to go ahead and complete those. The last one does not set anything up, so you may use any way you would like to. Remember, there are 3 ways. There's one where you use the word to separate and compare. The other one is to use the colon, and the other way is to actually write a fraction like we did here. This is the colon method, this is the fraction method. I prefer the fraction method, and that's the way you're probably going to see it written out for the majority of the time. All right, go back, get your homework done, and I will see you in the morning.